Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast.
This is brought to you by, well, you.
If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty, and today I'm joined by the whole family, sans Dagan, for another episode of Sacred Symbols Cross-Defining Duke. Chris Raygun, I want to start with you. I don't want you to beat me up. So we've known about this for a while. Obviously, you've known about it for the longest because you're involved in it, but you can finally talk about your endeavors. The gym going and all of this was not just peculiar Chris behavior, but actually had an intent.
Yeah.
So talk to us.
Yeah, so they announced it today, not on the day that you're going to be hearing this, of course, but today they announced Creator Clash 2. I'm going to be a part of it. I'm fighting Froggy Fresh, which is insane. If anybody is a school of old school internet, they know that this is a ridiculous match. I've seen so much excitement about it too. It's like this is this is a ridiculous matchup, and I'm stoked about it. But yeah, that's kind of why. If anybody's been subscribed to the channel for a while and been wondering why there haven't been videos, that's also mainly the reason. It's a lot of prep time, but yeah, it feels good to not have to talk around it anymore. Jesus Christ, that's so annoying.
Yeah. It's like it's vague. It was getting very vague, dude. The video that you put up was fun on your YouTube channel. People should go check it out. But the clip of you getting punched in the stomach was fucking hysterical. Like the guy just punching you over and over again in the stomach.
Yeah.
I was like, this is good shit. Love that.
Yes.
But I asked you before you came on the show, and Cog and I actually, before you got here into the channel, were talking about how much we loved your gloves. And I had asked you, which are Puerto Rican flag gloves, and I had asked you if I could somehow secure you a pair of Sacred Symbols trunks that you can wear. And what I envision, I don't know, what do you guys envision for this? Just kind of like the belt buckle part. Would it just be the logo? Would that just be it? Is that simple enough?
You're going subtle. Oh, you're going subtle.
Or do you want it to be like crazy?
Full branding. Like I was to say, throw a
like
Duke
NASCAR?
logo on his ass cheeks, man. Call it a day.
Oh.
Well, I don't want to treat him like a NASCAR. I mean, it's his thing. I'm just trying to include one of his brands.
No. I think it's a good. I want. Well, I'm not going to spoil it here, but I think that's not a bad addition for sure. Maybe a stand down of some kind.
Okay. Dustin, you want to look into this? I'm gonna, as the executive producer, you're gonna have to go ahead and look into this. That's your. That's your.
I was gonna say you went from asking to commanding in the same sentence, so right. I will look into it.
I appreciate that, Dustin. Since we're with you, how are you today, executive producer, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm very good. Just hanging out. I actually went to bed a little early last night. Abnormal. Here's the thing. I was thinking about this morning. When I go to bed, even if it's just half hour, 45 minutes, the next day I'm like, man, I feel great. But you know what? That feeling, very easily forgotten. Because tonight I'll be watching One Piece with Holly and I'll say, you know, what's one more episode? Just one more right now. And then you get in bed and you start watching a YouTube video on your phone or something. And then it's 1 a.m. It's like, totally forgot about that great feeling because I will not be feeling it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever felt great in my entire life. Never felt great.
Fair enough.
Never woke up and was like, I'm ready to go. You know, let's do this. Never had that gusto and that eagerness and that zest.
That's because you don't have yourself a show like One Piece that you know will last until you fucking
die,
end up in a retirement home.
Totally. I imagine
Dustin will not see the end of One Piece. None of you will.
Fuck you. Yes, I will. You want to bet on it, Chris? Dustin. Yeah. Do you want to box for the? Well, no, that doesn't. I don't want to fight Chris. I
don't know about that. Did you see the video? I mean,
video he looked ready.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, but I would bet Chris about me finishing One Piece if we want to make an official bet.
All right, we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be an interesting fight. I was asking before Chris got here, how well would I do in a fight against Chris? Because I have reach over him, but I'm like, the second he gets through that, it's he'd break me in half like
run away.
Well, let's be culturally appropriate, like a piñata.
Yeah. Well, that's Mexican, so you're already fucked up.
Fair enough.
Damn.
All right. The Dukes are here. Mr. Matty Plays, how are you today, my friend?
Doing all right. Currently getting beat up on Twitter over a little Forspoken action, but otherwise I'm thriving. I'm doing well. Having a good time. Just every time I bounce into I don't know when that notification section will clear up, but every time I bounce in there, it's just a new wave of takes galore. So it's been fun, but otherwise, doing pretty well, man. Doing pretty well.
Good. Mute those threads, and you'll never see.
I
any of that
did. I
stuff.
don't know
Yeah.
why they're going through. I literally hit mute this conversation. I'm like, okay. Like once it got to like 13K likes, I'm like, done.
Yeah.
See you later.
You know what
That's because Twitter is broken. On the back end.
I figured, right? I was like, okay, I guess that's not going to work. And I wake up and it's at like 40K likes and just a ton of quote retweets.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Okay.
But like,
I read some of those.
All
Pretty
right.
interesting.
Did you? Yeah. Oh man.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we're
Birthday.
going to talk about that in a little bit because
Yeah.
I want to get it in all the Forspoken stuff, especially because I don't think
can
the three of us on Sacred Symbols are going to play it. So
Can I
this would be a
suggest
good
something real
opportunity.
quick?
Yeah, please.
Matty, you should take all those quote retweets and make a hoodie
shirt.
out of them.
A shirt. Yes.
Dude, just wear
that's
them.
such a good idea. Just wear it on my chest.
Yeah,
God,
it's
I'm
like wearing your enemy's
misogynistic of
skin
you.
after the battle.
Like, just really just wear it around.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, bide your time, and figure out your various options, and I wouldn't worry about it too much either.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
genuinely not.
Yeah, good.
I don't know
yeah.
if it came across that way,
No,
but
no, it didn't. It didn't come
Yeah.
across that way. No, it didn't come across that way. First of all, with so many likes, you know what my favorite passive aggressive new move on Twitter is though. Although I just do this when I notice I'm in a thread and I don't post anything but advertisements anyway now. But is I just remove myself from the post. You know, you can do that now. Like you literally can just make your name so it doesn't click anymore and it's just not a link anymore. And that's my favorite passive aggressive move. It's like, get me out of this. I want you to know that I don't want to be in this anymore. Please leave me alone. All right. Cog, good to see you.
Good to see you.
How are you, my friend? I'm proud of you guys. Our favorite website, Video Games Chronicle, that we cite all the time, cited your podcast and your website, Lords of Gaming, which I thought was pretty cool for a story recently. Congratulations on that. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Doing some reporting, doing a little travel. Came back from the Game Award situation last week in New York. So trying to get affiliated with that and see what's going on, what they're doing for the city and the kids and stuff like that as far as video game programs and things like that.
Sick.
Other than that, a lot of stuff to talk about, man. So I'm excited. We got a show today.
Yeah, I am too. There are two topics I want to focus on primarily. And by the way, I thought this was funny and everyone would appreciate this. When Cog got into the room for us to begin recording today, I was like, hey, quick question. Did you just never get your bonus this year? And he just never said anything. I got his snail mail bounced back to us and he just never said anything. And I was like, well,
I forgot. I was like,
yeah,
that ain't good.
I was like, man, I hope he doesn't think we're like dickheads or something like that. Holy shit, like we're just shove lying. Like it's like
Colin cut me out.
a game of chicken. Felt really bad about that. I was like, oh no.
We good, man.
All right, my friends. Well, this sounds a little dire, but I want to talk about what's going on with Xbox, and I figure this is the great place to talk about it. It comes up every once in a while on our show. Obviously, the Duke Show, Defining Duke, is all about Xbox. You should go listen to that every week for deeper discussion. But I really wanted to pick everyone's brains about what I would consider like what's wrong with Xbox, what's going on over there as far as Halo and kind of their game development and layoffs at Bethesda and ZeniMax. And the one thing I want to say at the very top is something I want to reiterate from Sacred Symbols last week, which is that the recent layoffs at large, like 10,000 heads, I feel like has nothing to do with Xbox and has a lot to do with the economy at large. A lot of companies are just shedding weight, 5%, 10% of headcount. I think a lot of these companies are super bloated. As I noted on the show, Microsoft is almost twice as big in headcount as it was 10 years ago. Can you believe that? They're 200,000 people. They were at basically just north of 100,000 during the Xbox One era.
Wow.
So there's a lot of shit going on at these companies that needs to probably go anyway, and the economy is soft. So I wanted to note that I'm not really attacking it from that perspective. Instead, I want to attack this question from the perspective of, doesn't it seem like something is wrong with the brand? Because from my perspective, it does seem that way. And so, Matty, I want to begin with you. When I ask that question through the lens of 343 and Halo, through the lens of Bethesda and ZeniMax, and even through the lens of the Activision Blizzard purchase, which I feel like is an act of some desperation indeed to get games going on their system, I wonder, do you feel like Xbox is in some way sick right now?
To kind of copy what Cog said to some extent, I think the best tell will be once they start delivering games. Like I agree with like desperation, but I think once they start delivering games, we'll kind of get our finger on the pulse of whether or not they're really doing as poorly as it looks that way. Because I think once you start getting something out of them, those other things may become more minor issues. With 343, I'll start with Bethesda actually, because Bethesda to me was the kind of, I didn't see that one coming part of the layoffs, particularly Bethesda Game Studios. I have no insight on it, on the whys, the hows. I just know Phil Spencer said like, yeah, it was just tough for us to do this. But when they're working hard on Starfield, we know they're at least trying to get it out in the first half of the year. If they hit that or not is still unknown to us, but they're trying. I was surprised to see them get hit with cuts. I also thought, optically speaking, you're trying to get Activision. Bethesda's kind of the new family member still, in my opinion. It's kind of like their buddy, right? They're doing the Xbox Bethesda developer direct. They're doing the Xbox Bethesda summer showcase. They're kind of doing their branding together. I felt like, optically speaking, that'd be the set of employees you want to hang on to, let alone at the most prestigious team that you got them from. So to me, that was the big surprise factor. And that may just speak more to the economy than anything. But when it comes to 343, I know Cog and I, we were calling for like, there needs to be change at the top. And we got that. What I didn't expect was them to kind of gut a good chunk of the studio, right? We don't know the official employee count. We just know, according to Lords of Gaming, they got as high as 450 during the development of Halo Infinite, because they, it's just a Microsoft strategy for hiring just to save money on taxes, I believe. But they do contract work. Like, they'll hire people on for 18 months. And so if someone creates a problem within that 18-month window and that person's contract expires, you can't go and tap them on the shoulder like you would a standard employee and say like, hey, how did this come about? Like, can you give us insight since you built this thing? Someone has to go in, relearn all of that. And so I think the problems within the studio just kind of cascaded upon themselves. And when you combine that with the upcoming recession, the layoff seems kind of inevitable now in 2020 hindsight. Are they sick? Again, when they start delivering, it'll be a better tell. Right now, we got a lot of rumors about, studio mismanagement. Like, for example, The Initiative being one. We still haven't heard much about Perfect Dark. With Rare, it's kind of camouflaged pretty well, but we get a lot of Sea of Thieves updates, but we don't know what the hell's going on with Everwild. So some of them are hidden a little bit better than others, but with 343, it kind of makes sense when you look at the whole string of events, right? The lead up to launch, the after launch, the impatience from fans, and the way they're chopping things down. Perhaps, and we didn't get a chance to talk about this on Defining Duke, the most fascinating part of it all was 343 coming out with like one sentence saying, we're going to work on Halo games now and in the future. To me, I've always been the part of the squad that said like, let's not give them Halo anymore. Like, I think it's easy to look at Halo as this lower prestige product because that's what it's become. But if you were to look at like another brand, this is Nintendo and Mario. This is PlayStation and I'd say maybe The Last of Us or maybe Spider-Man if we're looking at popularity of like current games. And you don't see them treating those titles like shit at all. And when you look at what's happened with Xbox and Halo, it's nothing short of a disgrace, whether it's management's fault, employees' fault. We've heard mostly the blame lies with management. But to me, it's just a disgrace on how it's ended up. And I think that's where some of the purchasing desperation you may be smelling comes from, right? Because they need to find the next big IP. And I think they're praying to God it's whatever Bethesda Game Studios is cooking with Starfield that they can start attaching their brand to. Because right now, the thing they were synonymous with for multiple generations is kind of just dead in the water. So ultimately, like, are they sick? I'd say a little, but like brand-wide, I can't say definitively. But when it comes to like Halo, yeah, definitely. Very sick. On the deathbed.
Fair enough. And we'll get to Halo specifically in a minute. But Cog, I want to go to you. I mean, you could speak about Halo if you'd like, but I'm wondering how you feel about all of this, because the one thing that I thought was interesting, and this wasn't reported in the game sphere, this came from outside of the game sphere, because again, 10,000 employees is mostly not from Xbox, but from other parts of Microsoft as well, is Business Insider reported that these layoffs were specifically targeted at weak performers. Yes. So this wasn't like them just being like, we have too many heads. It's specifically like, we have too many heads and we need you to go after the weakest 5% basically of our employees. And so they did. And I find interesting that with that known or reported, that 343 is the one that suffered. That's a bad optical thing. But the other bad optical thing is Bethesda and ZeniMax. Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is was strange. So with that lens, you can pull at any thread you'd like. What do you want to talk about here?
No, valid point, Colin Violent. We talked about it, me and Matty talked about it on Duke, in the sense of, in big corporate, when you're going through layoffs, and I've been there before, so I want to talk about the human element. It's a scary time. You don't know what your future is going to be. You're going to see how this thing's going to play out. But like you said, corporations are going to look at what is underperforming as a whole. They're going to look at it. They're going to assess the entire company. And the fact that 343 was targeted, to me, is a clear indication that they did not get the return on investment that they expected. So they're going to look at the quote unquote weaker performers, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And as far as, like you said earlier, Colin, like, yes, this is affecting big tech overall. There's, we know the economy that we live in. We know with the pandemic, maybe there was a slight over projection when people were staying at home and the profits were up and they were thinking that would continue on. But we've kind of leveled out. I want to say post-pandemic, because we're still in it, but as things have improved. So back to 343. Look, this is just a black stain. It's just, there's no getting around it. There's no, if you want to say sick, deathbed, mismanagement, there's nothing here I am going to say to fight that. At the end of the day, this is gross mismanagement. It hits extremely hard for me because, like Matty said, I look at Nintendo with Mario. We don't have these conversations. Hey, what's going to be the future of Mario? Are they going to make Mario games anymore? Like, we don't have these conversations. So, from my sources and what I hear, the developers really spoke out. We saw some scathing comments about incompetent leadership, mismanagement. And what I've been able to piece together is that there is a disconnect in that studio. And that studio is siloed off to be the steward of Halo. That is literally their sole job, is that. So where is this disconnect happening? Is it a situation where it's like, okay, one, the message is not getting up to the top on where they actually are in development and how the scope needs to be, right? Or two, is it a situation like Matty said in reference to the contractors where, look, I've been at places and I've hired contractors and had vendors before. There's usually a window after 10 to 12 months, you literally can't extend, or you can just extend for a certain amount of time. After that point, you have to then bring in some new people. If they are the stewards of Halo, one would think with a proprietary engine, you need synergy. You need full-time employees, right? You need people who are going to be there, that's going to be the steward and basically see this thing through. So if they're all operating in these little silos, how can you really get that continuity with one of the biggest franchises that you're hoping on? So, I would say overall, just kind of like as far as the rest of the studios, I'm in the same pocket as Matty. As far as like the new guys, it's like you just signed to a new record label. I got to see when your album come out first, and then I can make a determination, right? There are studios that are doing their thing, as far as, like I said, the Coalition, as far as Turn 10, as far as Obsidian, as far as Playground, that do their deliverables and get on time. But to me, the major indictment is this is Halo. This is unacceptable. There's no dancing around. And I'm curious now that like the statement came out that they're going to continue forward with this series. Like, are they? Is 343 really going to still steward it? If that's the case, I believe they had, what is it now? Pierre Heinz is now the one in charge. Yep. Yeah. So, from my understanding, he's the one that saved Master Chief Collection from, and put it into a playable state to where it is now, where it's actually outperforming Infinite. So you have that question. People are now, like, we literally did a poll just recently on ILP. Should 343 be pulled off? Should they continue and make new content, or clean slate? It is literally a three-way poll, dead heat. As far as what people don't know what to do with this franchise. Like, the frustration is high. And to the final point I would say is, I have to admit, this as a person, y'all know I'm Lord Acquisition. You know what I'm saying? But as a person who prefers acquisition over the alternative of a company going away, I have to admit, and this is just being brutally objective, I can see how in the conversations people have and say, hey, if you can't manage your own thing, your baby, why are we to trust you with Activision Blizzard King? Why are we to trust you with the health of these franchises? And that's a legitimate point. I literally can't say. So it's on them. The only thing, the last point I'll say, and I hope it happens out of this, is sometimes when you get publicly embarrassed, it's the wake-up call you actually need for change. And the fact that the developers were so staunch, former, whoever, going to, Jason Schreier, going to different outlets, to say what's going on in 343 is an indictment. So they've got to clean that up, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, very well said. A lot of interesting things there. You brought something up that I've been really thinking about a lot as well, but I have not really been able to put it into words until now, which is 343 in another corporate situation would have been much more important to manage properly. Say like the Master Chief Collection happens and it's a disaster like it was, and they finally clean it up. Then that you go and you say that'll never happen again. Right.
Mhm.
But then you have all of these problems over and over again. And at a company where you're not so bloated and huge that there are consequences for individual actions, that simply couldn't have stood. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is it's Microsoft's size and breadth that allows, I think, a company like or a developer like 343 to mismanage something so fundamentally important, because a lot of other companies simply couldn't tolerate that. They wouldn't have any ability to tolerate that. It would be too focal and too important. Makes me wonder how seriously Xbox is taken internally. People used to, and obviously they want to make money from it. They care about it, but people used to note interesting things like, oh, when you look at Microsoft's financial reports, Xbox is always like 5th or 6th after all these other things. Like, and it just, so I do, and Cog, you bring up a good point with ZeniMax specifically, where, okay, so now you're going and acquiring another thing. By the way, they're going to have to lay off a ton of people when that happens. I don't know what people think is going to happen, but that's going to create thousands of redundancies.
That's the thing I was learning afterwards too, right? Is a lot of people were writing up on that. Like, this is what happens with mergers and acquisitions. And I always say, like, we're all kind of learning together. Some know more than others. But to me, that was kind of like the surprise info. Like, oh yeah, a lot of layoffs occur after these types of things are done. So
totally.
Sorry, continue. I mean,
no, it's all good. I mean, when you merge corporations, first of all, the merging corporation is the one that wins. The merger is the one, the merged is the one that loses all those heads, your redundant accountants and HR people and all, whatever that goes. That's just the way it goes. And like Cog, I've been in those situations too, and I've thankfully survived. But I was with IGN when we were owned by Fox, when we were independent, when we were owned by a venture capital firm, and when we were owned by Ziff Davis, who owns them now. And it's a wild ride out there in tech, and I totally sympathize with everyone there, but it does seem like there's this focal problem where you can kind of let problems fester because there's too many other things distracting you. And it's true, Cog, like you would, in my opinion, you would never see something like this happen in Nintendo. And I don't think you would ever see something like this happen at Sony either. And it's worth noting that Sony and PlayStation had layoffs last year. They already had their round of layoffs. They might have more, I don't know. But to the targeted layoffs, PlayStation laid off people that were interacting with stores like GameStop, that were sellers to people like Amazon, that would go to GameStop Expo and preach new products to people that don't work in this business anymore. So they cut them out. They didn't go to Naughty Dog. That's kind of the whole point. They didn't say like, all right, we're getting rid of people at Naughty Dog. People, if that happened, I'd be like, whoa, something's fucked up at that studio, but that's not what happened. Instead, they laid off the people that they felt were more irrelevant or poorer performing. So I find that super fascinating. Chris, I know a lot of people want to hear from you about this because you are such a Halo fan, and
wait for this.
We've talked about this so much on the show over the last 5 years, but it just seems to me, we've said it before even Bonnie Ross left, and I floated my theory, which I think is true, that she might have even lasted so long because of the optics of firing a female studio head. And I do believe that might have played something into it, because you just wouldn't oversee this much failure generally and be allowed to stay there. But people like me that are kind of on the outside are befuddled because Halo was the shit at one time. The Killzone was created because they wanted to compete with Halo. That's where it came from. Yeah. It wasn't like it came out of a vacuum. And now it seems irrelevant. And I just find that so strange, especially at a time when their competitor might be coming out with more than one shooter to start playing in that arena again. So I'm curious, take it wherever you want.
Yeah, man, I don't even know where to begin with this, because it just feels like, I mean, we've obviously touched on the layoff, so I won't touch too deeply on that. But I feel like the main thing that surprised me was seeing that Joe Staten left. I knew that, it makes sense to me that 343 would suffer a lot of layoffs, because I mean, I love Halo, and I can't even fathom that they're still around. So like that doesn't surprise me. But that Joe Staten came in, and he's kind of like the main reason I was even remotely interested in where the future of Infinite would go, or where the future of the franchise would go. With him gone, I can't say that I really give a shit anymore. Like, to me, it's like, okay, that's a done deal. Finally, I can stop caring. And this is, and to me, I mean, I never want to say that these things are positive, but like for me, like as a fan of this series, I am kind of relieved to just kind of be able to be like, okay, that's done. I am not remotely interested in whatever the hell. I mean, I believe this guy, what's his name, Pierre?
Yeah.
I believe he's like probably like very, very capable. The Master Chief Collection is a great piece of content. It's a great package, but it's also a great package of expertly crafted games that existed before. I don't think, it's not to underestimate 343's wizardry with how they got that working together and how like matchmaking between like 4 to 5 different engines. That's like wickedly impressive. And I'll give them their roses for that. I don't know of any other piece of software that does anything even remotely like that. That is a huge achievement, and it will never be recognized as such because they fucked it up for 7 years. So to me, it's like, okay, I mean, this guy did a great job fixing something that was already amazing, just kind of janky. But like, what do you do with Infinite, where it's so mismanaged, and even from the ground up, it's just, it plays well. And that's what's so interesting to me about Halo as of like post Bungie. It's like, and maybe people in the comments will disagree with me, but like, it's so interesting to me that this franchise was amazing, right? And then it's not like a Sonic situation, right? Where you just get like Sonic 06 or something. Like, I don't think 343 has ever made anything catastrophically bad. Like, as far as like a product goes, it's just all fine. And in comparison to what Halo used to be, fine is catastrophic. And I think that's kind of, I don't know, it's just like, what do you do from here? It's like, if you can't meet that goal, then put the series on ice, man. Let it rest. Like, let it go away. I've always maintained the idea that like they should have been fucking around with spin-offs and shit for like ages before they even thought about continuing the main series again. I for a long time I was like, put the main series on ice for like 10 years. Do spin-offs, do like tactics games and weird, like do like a Alien Isolation shit, like horror games, fucking single player, like weird, like where's our
game just sells itself, bro.
A third person action arbiter game like God of War, Dante's Inferno. Can you imagine that? That'd be so sick. I would love that. But like, they don't have that. They just don't have that talent. Like, I'm sorry, I feel like that's blunt, but like, I mean, like, they can't do it. And to me, if you build a studio from the ground up to handle your main IP, because it's just too special to leave with just anybody, and they can't do it, at a certain point, give it to whoever. I want to see fucking bring back that Mega Bloks game. Do you remember that? Like, why not let random studios try with it at this point? There's no stature anymore. All of the stature and all of the good favor for Halo exists, but it exists within the context of those classic titles. That's why the Master Chief Collection still performs really well, despite those being like ancient games by this point. Halo 3 was 2007, and that is the most played game in that collection still.
Yeah.
That should say something,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Okay. It is interesting. The one thing, I mean, you guys have so many, I'm writing so many notes because I have so many interesting threads I want to pull at, but the one thing that I guess this brings up, and we can throw it over to you, Dustin, for this, and you can say whatever you'd like to say about any of these topics as well, is, does this give, my printer's turning off for some reason. Does this give Xbox the possibility of, and the potential of, centering their product and the Xbox brand around a new IP or a new idea and getting away from Halo? Because there are two examples, right? One is Nintendo, which has gone with Mario since, the 70s technically, and into the 80s with Super Mario and all of the rest. And they have a bunch of other characters, and we see all of that in their various crossovers and Smash Brothers and all of that. But you have a brand like PlayStation that actually has reinvented itself over and over again. And I think that actually has been, whether that was intentional or not, I think a lot of that came from the fact that they kept not hitting. And so they kept reinventing to try new things. And then sometime in the PS3 era, they hit on what PlayStation would become. And so when you think about Naughty Dog, there's no parallel to 343 or the Coalition or Turn 10. Turn 10 may be Polyphony, right? But I find the error in centralizing studios and even naming them after things in games is a stupid idea from the get-go, because it permanently associated them with that one IP and they sink or swim with it. And I think it's fairly clear 343 should just be shut down. And so I wonder what you have to say about this topic.
It's difficult because I feel like as much as a company can really try, they don't get to choose their mascot in some ways. They can try to put someone as the face, or a game or whatever, an IP as the face of the company, but it really, if the game ends up not being very good, or if it's in a case like Halo where we see this continual decline, then it doesn't really work out. And it's interesting, and I'd love to bounce off Matty a little bit about this, because right now, from my perspective, it feels like everything is riding on Starfield. Like, it feels like it's not really. Like, if Starfield's bad, it's not like Xbox is going away. But there's this feeling where it's like, just wait. This is the game. This is the time. And I feel like this is really concerning in a lot of ways. And this is coming from someone who fucking loves Bethesda games. I loved, obviously, Skyrim, Fallout 3, before that, Oblivion, right? And even Fallout 4, a game that I got the Platinum Trophy on, I think is an incredible game that's maybe a bit of a step, not a big enough step forward as it should have been, right? And then we see stuff like Fallout 76, which I know is not Bethesda proper, but they still slap their name on it, right? We have this game in development for so long. And I want it to be amazing, but I just don't know if it will be. And I wonder what, like, when this game comes out and it's inevitably 30 FPS on console, most likely, or something like that. But it's a joke. Like, we've joked about it, right? But
it's going to happen, right?
I feel
really,
pretty confident it's going to. Yeah, I don't have any information on it. I just, the way Todd was talking about it, man,
dude, on that Lex interview, he's like, 30 FPS is fine for our type of game.
Got those some tea leaves. It's got those some tea leaves.
Yeah.
It felt like it. I'm sorry,
dude, here's the thing about this 30 FPS thing is that it's like, ultimately, I think by and large for a lot of people, it's not a big deal. But even with a game that's way smaller than this, like a game like a Plague Tale, having that 30 FPS, that was a big deal. In fact, I feel like that's one of the biggest conversations around that game when it came out.
Yes.
And so I've been rambling a bit about this, but I feel concerned about how much is riding on this game, at least from a fan perspective. It's like, oh, it's Starfield. I'm like, I don't know. We don't know what the moment to moment of Starfield is.
Yeah.
Like, we really don't know very much at all about Starfield. And so, Matty, as the Starfield, you are Mr. Starfield as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
I want you, I mean, how are you feeling about this? About like the ride or die nature? They're giving him more and more time constantly. And, I support that, but I don't know. It feels like a dicey situation in some ways.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's really risky because it's kind of a product of the community, but it's also Xbox's fault, right? Because how many years have we said next year's the year? Like, next year we're going to get stuff. And
yeah,
I think as we wait longer, the expectations only ramp up. Well, you've taken this many years, so certainly this has to deliver on everything because, people don't know what goes into game development. They think they're like constantly adding features. Like I would have to imagine Starfield's been done doing that for a while and they've just been bug testing this whole time. But the pressure is high because, for all I love about Bethesda Game Studios, and I'm just like you, Dustin, like they're probably my favorite developer in the industry. I just love their approach. I love their games. They make buggy games and they're trying to get something out of their system that's been there since day one, really. And that's a tough ask. And I think they're definitely feeling the pressure. You mentioned the Lex Friedman podcast, like Todd even talked about that. Like there's a lot of pressure riding on Starfield and they know it clear as day. And I think Xbox it's not really on Xbox fans because I would say out of everything Xbox has shown gameplay wise, Starfield looks the most distinctive, unique, blockbuster experience that we're seeking out. Like, I think Redfall looks okay. Like, I'm not crazy about it, but Hey, don't look at me like that. Hold on now. But I think Starfield does kind of give the energy Xbox fans have been looking for. So I think that's why all the pressure rides on it. If we knew Hellblade coming in September and Avowed coming Q1 2024, I think the pressure is offloaded from Starfield's shoulders. But since Xbox kind of put themselves in that year window, like everything you see going to be out in a year, and Starfield was the biggest one, it does put them in this spot where it's like, you got to deliver on this. But I think if with maybe Developer Direct, they can start opening some eyes to some other cool stuff they're doing, it might take some pressure off. But right now, Starfield is the big one until they show other big ones. And that's other games that we've been waiting on, right? Fable is another, like Perfect Dark. If they can start, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Colin, right? If Xbox can start, and it's really Cog's statement, right? This is all Cog's argument. He put this in my head. It's all his fault. When Xbox starts dropping stuff, I don't say it to defend them. I just feel like a lot of their problems will fade. Just like with PlayStation, like they're delivering. So, things they were doing that people weren't so agreeable with kind of just fade a little bit. Like I think if Xbox, for example, had the blue box issue, right, with Hassan Karaman, like if that was them during this kind of drought era, people would be like up in arms way more than what was happening with Abandon. So I do think, though, to answer your question ultimately, Dustin, that the ride or die nature, so I wouldn't say it's a risky bet. Like I think if you're going to bet on a team, Bethesda Game Studios isn't a bad one to bet on, but you're definitely like running the risk of someone just being incredibly disappointed with it and it kind of spoiling Xbox, and Xbox knows what happens there. You switch teams. Mm-hmm. They don't want that.
Well, and that's kind of leads me to the other thing that I was thinking about Starfield. And I think that maybe some of this is us as hardcore enthusiasts are projecting onto things, but it's this idea about, is Starfield the Halo replacement? Is this the IP that Xbox wants to be the new face? Which clearly there's an idea that you could have this be the face of Xbox for a set amount of time. Like this is the game or whatever. But just thinking like, man, but once this game is out, when is that, like for Bethesda, unless there's changes made? Not Matty, I've appreciated your takes on this type of stuff, is that Bethesda, understandably has a tight hold on a lot of their IP. But like, if we ever want to see Fallout 5,
don't get me started, brother.
Something's got to change. And that's the question. And it's already been proven. It's like someone else can make a good Fallout game. It's happened before.
Someone else arguably made the best Fallout game.
Yeah, we like to pretend that didn't happen, though.
Yeah, someone that they fucking own now.
Yeah, they own it. It's exactly. Obsidian is awesome.
The CEO has been campaigning. He's been noticing. He's been saying Fallout a lot. Oh, we love the opportunity.
Yeah. He's like, I'd like to make one before I retire. I'm like, wouldn't you ever? Yep.
And they're down the hall.
If Furious ever stumbles across this episode, keep beating that war drum, man. They're gonna cave one day.
So, I don't know. The only last thought that I'll just say is that, like, looking at this whole, this whole conversation from the bird's eye view about the situation with Xbox and not having that face and not, aggressively buying stuff to try to get those new IPs in and stuff like that. I wonder if when I think about this situation now, I can't help but think about PlayStation and where we've talked about on Sacred Symbols about the worry about where it's going. It's like everything's good right now, like really good. But the IP that they're pushing is still, we'll say, relatively fresh, right? Horizon isn't new, but we're only 2 games into this IP. God of War is definitely not new, but this is the second of the revival.
And it's going away, apparently.
And it's apparently going away.
Really?
But we hear about all of these Horizon projects. There's no end to The Last of Us in sight. It's like, is PlayStation going to find themselves in a similar situation if they just keep leaning on this stuff over and over and over again, where it's like these things have kind of run their course, like Halo ran its course, and Gears of War, I don't know. I can never get a read on if that community's happy or not.
They are.
I know some people are.
Mike is a huge Gears fan, and they love Gears. Well, she loves Gears.
Okay. So. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people.
For everyone, but
you know how you can tell that they're happy is that you don't hear
quiet.
from them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's why I can't tell. Yeah, you're right.
Because they're too busy playing the game.
Yeah, that's fair. I never thought about that.
Yeah, Let me ask this real quick before we move on. Chris, you can answer this. I mean, everyone can have a say in this. 30 frames is totally unacceptable for Starfield, isn't it? I mean, I don't understand. Dude, God of War is at 60 frames. I actually think the better example is Horizon. Horizon Forbidden West is 60 frames. And are you going to tell me that Starfield is going to look better than that game? Is that really the argument? Like, I can't. Chris, for especially for the Dukes and your more the Dukes-centric audience that might not listen to us, and you guys don't know the history, Chris broke me on frame rate. Like when we started the show, you can go listen to it. I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck about what the frame rate is. I don't care. And then suddenly PS5 came and Chris started to tell me to just focus in on frame rate. And I did, to the point where, as I explained, when I played Evil West recently, which was awesome, I platinumed it.
I love that game.
It's great. And I beat it 3 times. And
wow.
And I started playing it because it was in 30 frames mode, so it's in 4K or whatever. And I was like, I thought I was having a brain aneurysm. I was like, holy shit. I can't. And it's the reason why I won't go play Gotham Knights. Like, I believe Gotham Knights is probably a Colin style game, lots of checkboxes and things to do and things to upgrade and all that. But I'm not playing it at 30 frames. There's just no way I'm playing it at 30 frames a second. And so, Chris, doesn't it matter that that would happen? I feel like it matters to me.
It 100% matters to me. Like, I've been a frame rate snob for a long time. I can't. Like, the second you experience 60 frames and you go back, it's just you notice it. Like, it's very, very noticeable. I remember I tried, actually, when the Halo 3 servers were shutting down. I jumped into some final games on the original disc that runs in 4K for some reason, but it also runs at 30. And I remember just feeling like, oh my God, this feels infinitely worse than the collection. Like, it's noticeable. Like, it is a transformative. Playing a game at 30 to 60 is really, really transformative. The second you get beyond that, like 120, it's like, that's noticeable, but it's not. I don't know. I'm fine with 60. It's definitely better with more frame rate, but like, to me, it's, even if you're operating under the assumption that this is like, oh, it's not really a combat oriented game. It doesn't need to be, fast in the same way that like a shooter does. There might be truth to that. It might be less of a problem for some people. I know turn-based games probably don't really benefit that greatly from increased frame rate, but it just looks nicer. It's more pleasant. It fucking hurts your eyes less. So, like, to me, that's just by itself. It's like, I don't want to play a game that's going to give me a headache. I don't want to have to play Starfield with like a bucket full of Advil next to me in case, it's just like, I refuse to go back. And I'm sure that's on console, I assume, which is still crazy to me. But
yeah, on PC, I'm sure it'll run to 60.
But fortunately, like, that's kind of the fortunate thing about the Xbox situation, is that like whatever games are available on console are going to, like, you will be able to play Starfield at 60 frames, presumably. I can't imagine that there would be no way for you to do that. But it is a little annoying that, we're at this point with home consoles that we're very, very used to this. Arguably, we've been used to this since, mid PS4, mid Xbox One generation. I mean, Halo 5 was 60 frames. I remember playing that kind of a lot and really, really enjoying that fact of it. And so, to me, that's a deal breaker. I almost did not play Plague Tale. And then I thought, like, oh, I could play it on PC. And fortunately, I have a fucking cacophony of human souls program, like, powering my computer, so it's unnecessarily strong, and Excellent. It could run it. But it's baffling to me that anybody would say 30 frames is fine. Like, I can't. Like, don't say anything. Don't say anything if you're gonna say that.
Cog, am I at a again, people know I'm stupid in many things and in many ways. Tech is with one of them. But I'm pretty sure PlayStation 5 hasn't had a game like from first or second party not running at 60 frames. And I feel like on PS5, I should say. And I feel like there is something strange about it. Am I wrong to say there's something strange about a game like Spider-Man, which will run in 60 frames, no doubt. Horizon, God of War, all these different games, Returnal, everything running smoothly. And then something like Starfield, Bethesda's known for scope, but not for fidelity. It's just a little surprising to me. I don't understand Maybe my
No,
Luddite brain doesn't really get it. What do you
I
think?
understand where you're coming from. I
Yep.
mean, I think that from a fidelity standpoint, yes, the PlayStation games that are running at 60 so look for better than what we've seen thus far of Starfield, no question. I don't want to disrespect the things and the systems in the background that Starfield presumably is supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying? And then you're talking about, I don't know, procedural generation. You're talking about all these different layers of systems and factions and conversations and dialogue trees. I don't profess to know the complexities of that. I will say, yes, I will be disappointed if it's 30, no question, because there's a part of me that's like, man, it's exclusive to next gen platforms, right? It's exclusive to Series X and S. It's not like it's held back per se by the Xbox One base, so to speak. So that part gives me hopes that at a minimum, you can put a performance mode, even if you're running at 720p or whatever it would take the resolution drop to get there. When you hear the comments from Todd, he seems to stress graphical fidelity, being able to pick up every object, every cup, do all this discernible interaction in his world. So when I hear that to me says that you are target. And the way, first of all, it was shown at 30. When Digital Foundry broke it down, what we saw, that was 30 frames, right? And a little choppy one at that. But it
looked 30 frames.
Yeah, it was 30. So to me, I've already braced myself. I don't like it, but I have to be brutally honest too. I'm with Matty and Dustin on this. I love those type of games. I'm like to my core, like Oblivion, Morrowind, Skyrim. That's my soul. I live in these worlds. You know what I mean? So to Chris's point, if it does come out and it's 30, I got this nice little option, 3090 or whatever it is.
Yeah, you're good.
Xbox has allowed me to transfer my cloud data and go from platform to platform and do what I like. What my hope is, this is what I'm thinking might happen. The Series S definitely is going to be locked at 30. That's just where I see this, right? And then the X, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking the X may hopefully have that performance mode, whether it be the 1080, 1440p kind of situation. Maybe it runs at a sub 60, maybe it doesn't hit it all the way, but it's like as close, as long as it's above 30, even it's a fluctuate, it's a variable frame rate, but it's faster than 30, I think people will be happy. And that's what I'm hoping for. I have no inside information on that, but I will say, yes, Todd seems you got to look at his word, his verbiage. It's very fidelity driven, very cinematic driven. It's not about the twitch and the fast pace. And he's talking about shooting aerial combat. I know, Chris. I was shaking my head too. I was like, yeah, you setting us up for the 30.
It's literally they showcased first person shooting.
I know.
Like they showed that.
Yeah, I'm watching it now, actually.
It might not be like, it's not Call of Duty, it's not Halo. People aren't like sliding and jumping around or nothing at like Mach 10, but I mean, it's still, I don't know. Things are just better.
Like for that cinematic experience.
Yeah,
it's really, I got to say, it looks really fun, but I just blame Chris, man. This wouldn't even be a thing for me 2 years ago. Seriously, I wouldn't even.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Colin, I literally, when Destiny was on Xbox One, and then I was like, bruh, I know we're not doing 30 on fast twitch FPS shooting. And then I'm like, okay, the Xbox One X, the Scorpio, it's coming. That's going to resolve that. 30. I was like, well, I'll be right over here on the PC. Yeah, and this was before cross save. Yeah. I literally abandoned years of Destiny 1 and 2 progression, started fresh on PC. And my whole clan on Xbox was like, bro, I was like, I'm like, Colin, until you see 60, come back and talk to me. Then the next generation consoles, that Dustin, it's Jimmy Champagne though. When the next gen consoles, they saw 60, they go, oh my God, COG, now I see it. I can't go back. Yeah, because you was running in molasses all that other time. I'm not doing molasses.
The thing that really sells it is being able to compare the same experience running at both frame rates. Like once, like that happened with me with Destiny 2 as well. Like when I played on PC, I was like, I can't fucking believe I even bothered with that. Bro. Like it is fully transformative. Like that's in my opinion.
Enlightening.
It's in my opinion, sincerely, that would probably quantify if I was like scoring games. That would quantify to maybe like a 2-point difference. Like it is significantly transformative to a game. And again, it's not going to be as like obviously Destiny's like a fast-paced video game. Like that game's on crack, arguably. So like it's not Starfield, but like I don't know, man. It's just disappointing that we're in this era where we're so used to games coming out on like next gen consoles and they're like 60 60 60, and then the big thing from, you know, one of the main competitors for PlayStation who's been launching these 60 frame games is you know, rumored or basically confirmed to be basically half, or you know, it's disappointing. And I understand the contextual difference between running a game like Spider-Man and something even remotely like a modern version of something like Skyrim. Like I understand that there's like there's a lot of memory that needs to be taken into account with like physics objects and interactable. Like it's a very, very different, like Spider-Man, God of War, Last of Us, as pretty as they are, they're generally very, very static worlds in comparison. And I understand that that's going to have some impact, but to me, I'm just like,
well,
I'm on PC.
Yeah.
Like I can't.
Well, let me ask you this though, or let me say this, I guess, because anyone can if they have a retort, is I would argue. First of all, I've always described Fallout 3 as being a religious experience for me. I had never played a game like that, and I fell in love with that game. I just absolutely adored it, and I love New Vegas too, which was not them. But Fallout 4 felt old to me, and Skyrim I just wasn't into, mostly because it just didn't run on PS3 when it came out. It just was horrible, and so I just moved on. But it's so funny to me. I would ask, and this is where you see something like Lex, where you just wish he knew. He does know games, but you wish he knew a little bit more about games. Where I'd be like, so are you suggesting, Todd, that the essence of your games is picking up metal cans and
He would.
shooting fucking bottles? Like, because to me, I'm like, I would say that's not the essence of your game. The essence of your game is the environmental storytelling, yes, but not picking up everything off of the shelf and then dropping it and encumbering yourself
Putting
and
a
all
bucket
that.
on someone's head.
Yeah, I don't know. To me,
Skyrim.
I just feel like that's a little bit strange. That's totally his prerogative, but and maybe that's why I'm just not I don't speak from a place of being a Bethesda Game Studios fan.
Mhm.
I say over and over again, Machine Games is
Right.
really the studio I'm going to miss.
I would say,
Go on. Yeah.
I mean, I'll let Matty take it, but I would say the interactability of those worlds are kind of what drives me to care about it. Like, it's not even necessarily, and I think it's in large part why I feel the same way about Halo, to be honest. Just the vehicle the physics of it.
Sandbox,
Like the
yeah,
understanding that like there are things that I could do in this game like 10 years from now that I will have never seen before and will never see again, because the systems in place are so interactive with each other and they can't be fabricated in such a way. It's the difference between animation-led experiences and physics-driven experiences. Like you just know when you see it. It's like Call of Duty's very, very animation-led. I remember specifically like when they added what was the Call of Duty with the wall running?
Advanced Warfare?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like every time you
One I
clung to a
forgot about,
wall,
yeah.
it was like you were on like a small, like a children's roller coaster that was just like automatically. It's just like there was no interaction to it at all. It was just this like, okay, you're here now. It's basically a quick time event, and those are different experiences. And I think that's the reason why Call of Duty's been able to run at 60 for so long. It's because it's so simple as far as that goes. But yeah, I don't know. I think the interaction's a pretty huge part of it for me, anyway.
Yeah,
Even if
interesting.
would
it
agree.
feels subtle, it feels like a garnish to most people, I would imagine. But it's kind of, I don't know.
I think it's about like the, if you will, can-do attitude. Like, I think that's what makes all RPGs really is like, some developers argue like, oh, why would we make an RPG where only like 5% of people will see this one specific ending? And it's like, for most people, they'll play an RPG once and it's about the ending they get for their playthrough. And like, that's what makes the game special. They may not run through it 3 times like you're hoping they do to see everything, but you gave them like a specially tailored experience. So like, I think that can-do energy for Bethesda, while they kind of have multiple endings for some of their games, but like, it's usually like permutations of the same one. For me, the interactability is like, I'm not going to pick up like every can, but the idea of like when I'm in a firefight and I throw a grenade and when it blows up, I see like cans fly off the shelf. Like that's only possible because like each object in the game is there. You can pick it up, you can touch it. And I think it's also like for modders, which just drives Bethesda games further than any other open world RPG on the market, is like, oh, this can become something else, or because this is interactable, what can I make within this infrastructure? So I get where you're coming from, because I think most people don't care, but I think if they were to if they were to take it out and say like, this lens cap here, I couldn't pick it up and add it to my inventory, I'm like, it kind of falls apart. Because Fallout 4, like its biggest strength was making those random pieces of crap that you could just pick up all fold into a crafting system. While I thought the settlement system was like way overdone, I still think it made that little thing you found meaningful. And if they can take some of that into Starfield, because we already know they have like crafting and settlement building already, a little lukewarm on it. But if they can kind of make that more meaningful, it just plays into their strength. So I just hope they continue to keep that a focus, those like little things. Because like even in Skyrim, like I barely mess with alchemy in Skyrim, but just knowing I can like go pick a flower, take it to the table, and make something out of it. To me, that just goes so far. It's just the idea that I can do it. Sometimes it's not even doing it.
It is one of those things where like I feel like if it's not something that people would notice necessarily, but if you took it out, people would notice. It's like people don't cognitively notice, but I think they would register the fact that it was gone. Because even when I play some other RPGs and I go to like a table and sometimes I want to pick something up and I can't, I'm just like, oh right, this isn't. Yeah. I forgot that this isn't a Bethesda.
That's why I sound like a fanboy, but that's why some RPGs that aren't Bethesda just don't scale for me, because I see them trying to do things. Like when I played The Witcher 3 for the next gen update, like they have a couple of things you can interact with on specific tables, but Bethesda's like every fucking thing in this world you can pick up and touch and add to your inventory. If you steal in a town, they'll like come after you. It's almost got this GTA issue to it. That is, I'm just like, this is awesome. Yeah, I love it.
That was not to cut you. That was the eureka moment for me when I first played. My first was Oblivion, and the level, the justice systems, and going through each individual home. And I would go through people's like dressers and kitchens, and you would see like a red icon when you'd pick up something from their house. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I started to accumulate and just steal items. I was literally stealing items from people's houses. So I would come out. And then I remember the first time the guard was like, "Hey, you stop." And I'm like, what's going on? Like they've written the recognition of these items I wasn't supposed to have. And then this whole morality, do I pay? Do I fight? And then I created my own story. When I got strong enough, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come back and now I'm going to murder the townspeople. I would do the guard, I can do what I want. So it's just that, like you said, that customization, that level of interaction that people really care for. And then you can, go crazy with the mods and stuff. I think that's why people have the affinity.
Yeah, you guys make a really compelling case, actually, for what makes those games different and stand out for sure. I'd be interested to know what the telemetry over time has been on choice-based outcomes in games and endings, because we know from BioWare that they basically said that 9 out of 10 people never see anything on the Renegade path at all, including the ending. And I wonder if that says to them, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, but those
they tried, right? We saw how that went.
Right. But for those developers and publishers that kind of confine themselves to their own rule set regardless and satiate that demand, which I think Bethesda Game Studios does pretty well, there's something to be said about that. I personally think Starfield looks pretty damn good. It's just, I just know from my Fallout 4 and Skyrim experience, which are my two most recent and the two most recent Bethesda Game Studios experiences, if you don't count Fallout 76, it's just probably not for me. And, so I don't really long for it that much. Again, I think Arcane and Machine Games and those other studios are going to be much more missed. I loved Deathloop. I loved Ghostwire from Tango and all that other stuff. So
love Deathloop.
Matty,
you heard that?
I didn't make a face. I didn't make a face when he said that. I just let it happen.
Deathloop, I bought
the streets.
Yeah.
I bought Deathloop when it came out. I played it. I didn't like it, and then I went back to it earlier this year, and I ended up really liking it a lot. I ended up understanding it.
I love you, man. That's Arcane games, in my experience. That is a lot of Arcane games. Like I remember I first played Prey, and I was like, I don't understand. And then I played it like years later, and I was like, this is probably like a top 10 game. This is amazing. This is like one of the craziest games I've ever played. I imagine I'm waiting still on Deathloop because I really hated it. I was playing through it. I was like, I like the actors, like the characters, but I was like, I don't. I remember just meandering through this world, and I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and I'm angry about it, so I'm gonna stop.
I have a theory about Deathloop. I think that the more of a fan of Dishonored you are, the less likely you are to like Deathloop.
Oh, that's do you think so? True. That might be true.
Yeah. That's interesting because I don't like
Fire.
And I think if you really like Dishonored, you really owe it to yourself to play Dishonored 1 and 2, and after you do, you will like Deathloop less.
Yeah, like you got to go in
Pause.
reverse. You really do. I completely agree with it.
That's very interesting. Maybe I
Pause.
should
That
do
was
that.
boss,
Yeah,
Dustin.
because Deathloop felt like when I first went into it, it felt like I just didn't feel like it. I didn't understand the game. Like I just didn't understand how it all worked. The territories, the times of day. So there's like just multiple permutations of these different places, and you have to go in and just do these things in certain orders. It's a little Mega Man-esque too, which is kind of cool. But yeah, nonetheless, I don't even know why that came up. Oh yeah, I brought it up because that's a game I'm actually going to miss because we'll probably not get any more arcane games on PlayStation. I want to go around real quick before we get into the final thing I want to discuss, and Chris, we can start with you on this, which is where does Halo go? I mean, a lot of the discussion now, even though 343 released their very strange studio or very strange statement,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about where this can go, including within their own family, but elsewhere as well, or being put on ice. I really think what's best for Halo right now is to put it away for a long time and don't worry about it anymore. Move on to something else. But would you like to see that happen? And even if we didn't have that option, is there a studio that you have in mind that should get it back? I mean, should Sony work with Microsoft with Bungie and go back and let Bungie work on Halo? That'd be an interesting kind of little cross-pollination.
No, I think I don't know. It's tricky. Like I would like it to go away because I would like the fondness, like the fond memories I have of the originals to remain untainted. And the further we go into this, that's luckily held true because those games are just so damn good. It's really, really hard to even scratch them. But the longer this goes on, like the more likely it is that there will be one that just ruins it. And to me, it's just like, listen, just let it go for a long time. Wait for people to miss it. Like, wait for people to like, oh man, yeah, Halo was really cool. I kind of want another one. And by then, hopefully there will have been enough, leaps and bounds in tech to do something truly, truly special with a studio with like fresh eyes. I don't, the reason why I don't want Bungie to do it or I don't know, I'm not saying like, oh, id should do it, is because I don't even know if I necessarily want Halo back in a new way as a shooter even. Like, to me, I feel like it's a really cool IP. There's a lot that can be done with it. And I think they're just focused in this, they're in this weird cycle of, Halo's about Master Chief and Cortana, and that's it. We want to show that Chief has feelings. And it's like, like, I don't care. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, the first game is about human survival. The second game is about losing your religion. And the third game is about like modern fables. Like the third game is just all of these impossible acts that you're watching. It's like someone reading like a King Arthur-ass story to you, and it's like you're watching it happen. It's like they were all about very, very different things, and then as soon as 343 took it, it's like it's about John and he has feelings and he's a person. He's a person under there. He's got he feels love sometimes, and I'm just like this is not what dude, Halo 3 ODST was based on like Dante's Inferno, and that's dope as hell. Halo Reach is 7 Samurai. Like, why can't we have shit like that where it's like actually like inspired by like thematic things as opposed to like just arbitrarily trying to shove these characters down our throats that are just not even the same characters that we knew from ages ago. So like, to me, it's just like they're in this rut right now where they don't know how to break free of the characters that Bungie themselves broke free from with their last 2 entries. And it's like, I just don't know why they're so focused. So to me, it's like, listen, put it on ice, wait for people to miss it again, and then come back with something truly reinventive, truly special, something that, doesn't need to fulfill the niche that the Master Chief Collection fulfills, because that's already there to do that. The second the Master Chief Collection was on PC and working fine, I was like, they could do whatever the fuck they want with the next Halo game. Because this is sincerely because I know nothing's going to top this. As far as this specific feel, this specific vibe, this specific type of first-person shooter, they're not going to make another one like this. Like, it's just not. It's over for that. It's too special. It's too much. There's too much of a secret sauce in there. It's got a great campaign. It's got a robust multiplayer. It's got creative tools. It's got a theater mode. It's got all these things that like most games don't even launch with a third of today. That's not even just Halo. That's most games now. Call of Duty used to have a theater mode. Not no more. Call of Duty used to have campaign modes. And sometimes now they don't. Like, it's a very different environment. We're just never going to get that again. So to me, it's like, bring Halo back in 7, 8 years as like a single player game about completely different characters. Why not? Why not make a tactics game? Why not make a horror game? Why not use this really, really impressive IP, this impressive world that you're marquee studio from ages ago have built out for you and leverage it in a way that's like not stapled to the past. Like to me, I don't know. I want it on ice.
Well,
and one more thing.
Yeah.
That statement was weird as hell.
Yeah, it was.
Like when they were like, we will continue to make Halos and like make you continue to tell stories or whatever. And it's like, you made that god awful TV show. Like, I think they didn't read the room with that statement, because I looked at that statement, like I was actually kind of like really excited. Like, yeah, it's almost like a threat. It does feel like a threat, because to me, I'm thinking like, when I heard those rumors, I was like, oh, maybe a breath of fresh air. You know, maybe Obsidian sometime down the line makes it like an RPG in this universe, and how sick would that be? And it's like, no, we're gonna keep doing it. It's like, no, it's like, I don't want to hear this. This is not, this doesn't make me feel good at all. And I kind of like, I replied, I was like, 5th time's the charm.
Yeah, I saw the tweet. He was fine with that.
And people got angry, but I was just like, I don't like, it's been 12 years.
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange. Like, that's why I often say on Sacred Symbols, I'm afraid of, I think Sony's being quiet about a lot of things now, because I keep saying I don't think we're going to like a lot of what, and we being the hardcore are not going to like a lot of what they're doing, whether they're going to run things into the ground, make things multiplayer, lots of games as a service. They're not going to revive the things you want back. Like, we'll never get another Resistance probably, but we're going to get fucking, all this random ass shit. But that's just the nature of the game they're playing. But I'm grateful still that this is the end of God of War for now, right? It's over for now. Like, The Last of Us is this limited thing, although they're about to ruin it. Horizon is this limited thing, although they're about to ruin it. Spider-Man 2 was exciting, but then the Wolverine game where I'm like, oh, like, let's stay away.
Pockets. Yeah.
So we gotta, there are alarm bells, I think, going off in our own ecosystem too about this. It's just that nothing has gone wrong yet, at least in my opinion. And it is strange. Cog, I'm curious where you think Halo should go, or who should get it. Because here's what I think. Is Microsoft stone cold owns 2 of the greatest first-person shooter single-player studios in machine games and id. And if you did want to do something with it, that's always an option. And I don't think you need to even go any further than that. I would be afraid to kind of contaminate those studios with Halo, if anything. But you have the option to do that. So I feel like they're in good shape to just figure it out later. And for now, just like, I think, I don't know why I think there's an optical game. You don't want to shut down your fucking marquee studio, but there's a Japan studio vibe now around them where I don't think they're going to exist for much more longer than a few years.
Yeah, we got to see. I mean, like I said, the statement was very cryptic in like 2 lines or whatever, and I think it was more of a public relations thing to say, because obviously the word was going out that they are no longer going to be the stewards of Halo, that it will go to other people. So maybe they were trying to get ahead of that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm torn, because there's a part of me that completely empathize with what Chris is saying, right? And there's a part of me that, what's that age-old quote? What is it? The definition of insanity
is doing the same thing over and over.
And we're expecting different results, right? So there's a part of me that says the evidence is there to say they should no longer hold the keys to the franchise, and it's time to give it up. Then there's a part of me that says, okay, their sole existence is to do that, right? So maybe we kind of meet in the middle, where it's like, I agree, the lore and this world and the characters they have is so expansive that they can do spin-off or give someone else a spin-off. Like I said, a third-person type shooter, horror, all these different genres with all these people within Xbox Game Studios, where they could just be the steward from a lore perspective, right? And say, okay, make sure the timelines add up here, and this is what we want, and then we're going to connect this big multiverse.
That is, I think, their ideal role, because like even before Halo Infinite came out, their best received game was Halo Wars 2.
Yes.
The game that they just sort of worked in a managerial kind of, or like some kind of consult. Like I think they were like consultants or something.
What's that second studio called? I can't think of it. That made it. It's like something
Creative Assembly.
Creative Assembly.
Yeah, Creative Assembly. Halo Wars 2 was great. It was like people responded really well to it. It looked great. It's not my style of game, but like people who like that kind of game are like, we're really into it. That story is really cool. It looks gorgeous. Why I feel like that should have been a sign in some way as
Yeah.
well. Like, it's just like, this is clearly where you are strongest.
Right.
Why
And
not?
even with Halo Wars 2, I learned about Atriox, right? And I'm like, yo, who is this overall Thanos-like character that's coming to the universe, right? And the Spartans can't beat him, right? So it did kind of set up Infinite a little nicely for their quote-unquote big bad. So I want more of that. We have certain affinity kind of looming, right? There's supposedly Project Tatanka, supposedly their alleged battle royale.
Jesus
Who knows if it
Christ.
still comes out? Who knows if it still comes out? But, you know, my thing is I want them more in that, and then in their defense, free them of the pressure of the Bungie legacy, right? So that they can actually work on these other things and is not beholden to it. Now, on the other side, the only slight pushback I'll give Chris, because I'm with you, is that Halo Infinite at its core is a good game.
No, yeah.
So there's a selfish part of me that's like, man, like, you know, if you could just keep with the map packs and then give me a little, because remember it was quote unquote 10-year plan or whatever, right? So like, if you could give me that endless story content, something, because I would just hate to have to wait so long.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta see. It's a tough one. Yeah, Chris. I know
They laid, like, most of the people who were laid off from 343 were campaign team. So like, you're not going to see, that's kind of the thing. It's like, yeah, I was interested in the idea of like Joe Staten penning future stories in that game. Yeah, absolutely. But with him gone and that campaign team gone, it's like, I don't even know if that's going to happen. Like, I do think that game, like, Infinite plays great. Like, I like to play it. It's just, it's got so much of a stink on it because their first impression was so shit. And you can't undo that. I remember I suggested in one of our previous podcasts that they unrelease it and work on it until it's actually done. And I think that could have worked, but like, very clearly they're not in a capacity to afford that, even though they'll pay $60-something billion to buy Call of Duty.
No, final point.
Yeah.
Before I let you finish, and then I'll say my
go
final
ahead.
point.
Of course.
No. I would just literally say, like, kind of what me and Matty said. We were on the train. This should have been delayed. Right?
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
To have a fully featured Halo with campaign, Forge, and an actual live service model that was ready, right? If that would have delayed out of 2021 into 2022, when now they were barren, right? And you had a fully featured Halo for 2022, the difference that would make. So the final point I would say is that I would hope they learn the lessons from Halo Infinite, apply that to Starfield, launch it when it's ready, right? And as far as to your overall question, Colin, which is, at the end of the day, Chris may be right, and I'm hopeful, they may just need to kill it right here with that last entry, spin it off into other side stories, and take a while before Halo comes back in its fully featured form that we know it. But it's just so much damage right now, and the signs point to right now they're moving on from this Halo Infinite. That's what the signs look like right now.
Yeah,
from a campaign.
Yeah, the issue to me is that it just sort of feels like I like playing the game, but it just like whenever I turn it on, I'm reminded. You know what I mean? It's like I can't even really enjoy it as much as I would like to, because it is fun. It's really cool. It plays goddamn. It's probably like one of the best feeling shooters I've ever played, sincerely. But it's mired with this lens of just like, why is this unfinished still? Like, why did it have to be this way? It didn't have to be this way. Clearly, there's a quality here that exists, and it just didn't have to be this way. It's just the avoidability of it.
Yeah.
Frustrates me to no end.
Matty, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think both of you guys are on fire. I think the only thing I'd add on like the note of 343 being like shut down or changing projects is, it's a touchy subject to address because like he's the main reason I think Xbox fans have hope. But I think we don't sometimes consider the type of leader Phil Spencer is, and that's quickly ignored. So what I mean by that is like, I think Phil knows he could shut down 343, or he could move them off the project. He could really like get in there, make things happen. But I think he actively chooses not to. And I think that's because he himself was a creative. Like, he's been involved in those types of things. He knows what it's like. And I think he's empathetic to developers, and perhaps in a leadership position, you could argue to a fault. Because like, as a businessman, I think the choice with certain things are obvious. Like, you own Obsidian, you own Fallout. That's it. You print cash that way. You own Fallout, you make your HD collection. Halo's not working with 343 now for 3 games. You make that move to kind of sever ties to the best of your ability. Like Colin said, you own 2 very talented first-person shooting studios that can make competent stories or whatever they really want. You bring the game and the IP in their direction, perhaps. Not to lay all the blame at Phil's feet, but I think, eventually you got to go and start knocking at the top, the guy who oversees the operation, maybe Matt Booty as well.
Matt Booty, I was going to say, seems to be the guy that I would look at, actually.
Yeah, I was throwing him in there as well because, I respect on one front Xbox gives these creatives time because I think that's where we can see the payoff in games from Compulsion, from Ninja Theory, like these teams that we've been waiting on for a while, but with, I don't want to say proven talent, but we've seen what 343 is made of. We know, now you have to kind of help as the leader, you kind of have to help them adjust and accommodate them. Okay, this seems like too big of a thing for you right now. Let's scale you down. Let's start small and build you back up. Let's not give you the next big AAA Halo game. I do think to some degree, whether it is Matt Booty or Phil, I just think that leadership style has its pros and cons as we're learning here. And I think if you had a more bean counter style head, you'd see more aggressive moves being made. I think that's part of the shock here is Xbox has this sort of nice guy perspective to a lot of people. So when you saw, even though the layoffs are more Microsoft wide, you saw Xbox being a part of that. I was like, oh, Xbox? No. Simply no. 343 even? No. Even though it's kind of obvious from a business perspective why it happened. So that's the only thing I really had to add on there. When it comes to Halo, I think the options are obvious and we've said them for a while on Duke. It's time to experiment. It's been time to experiment. I don't even say that in a 2020 hindsight level, 343 kind of stinks, man. It's even if 343 was killing it, I'd still be saying the same thing. I'd still be saying, well, it's time to do some spinoffs. It's time to do some spinoffs because I think that's where series grow and you see how powerful they are because it's they can be multiple things. And Halo's one of those IP. They just, outside of an RTS and a twin stick shooter, which really wasn't great.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen that. And, that's the frustrating part about covering Xbox is there's so many obvious, painfully obvious things. We're bringing back a lot of 3D platformers. Where's Banjo? So many obvious things they need to do. And obviously some require more patience than others. But as a week-to-week speaker on, it's just man, y'all are annoying sometimes. I don't know how else to put it.
Doesn't it?
That's all I can really throw out there that's new.
I was going to ask, doesn't it, and this is kind of more, I guess, rhetorical, but doesn't it just seem, this is almost a ridiculous thing to say, but I see some of these big IP being mistreated. I think of Star Wars, in my opinion, at least with the films, the newer films, especially episodes 8 and 9. Dagan and I often lament about this on Knockback. It's I'm not just saying that I could have made a better film than episode 8. I written a better episode than that. I could have written a better treatment for a better Star Wars movie than that. 100%. What do I have the knowledge to make the entire script and film it? No, that's where it would go into the pipeline. But this idea that there aren't people that could do these things is so mind-boggling to me. You look at someone like Chris, right, who knows Halo so well. It's you think if you just didn't take just Chris and plant him in there somewhere, that he wouldn't make decisions that would be beneficial to Halo. It's almost this crazy, overcomplicated mess. I don't understand why it's, especially when you have momentum. I understand the difficulty in making Halo 1 and certainly Halo 2, right? And then you have some momentum and then you're handed this gift. And then you just it's like being handed the football, right? And then you just immediately fumble it, trip over your lineman's leg, and then when you're falling, the ball's in the air, you kick the ball further into the air. It's crazy. It's dude, all you got to do is take it and run with it.
Yeah. I feel I've said that on stream a couple times too, where it's I'm absolutely confident that I could have. If I was in charge of this, I would have figured this out a lot simpler. I understand that that's really cocky and overconfident and probably really, really simplifying, but I really fundamentally, and I know a lot of people talk about oh, it's a Microsoft management issue. And it's yeah, that's true. Also in part, the reliance on contract work does not help. It's arguably the main reason why everything is so fucked. However, it's just even just I don't know, some of the creative decisions that they made early on are just baffling to me. Like I made a joke earlier about like Chief has feelings, but like I mean like why? Like I really do think that's like a fundamental misunderstanding.
It's not a problem with the lore. Like deep down, like he's kind of like mentally castrated.
It's
right?
It's not even like a matter.
So he's really
kind
of not a person anymore.
It's not even a matter. Well, he's
person in that show with those ass cheeks.
Yeah.
Master Cheeks, let's go. Yeah.
Are you guys ready to see Master Chief's real
right there?
You ready to see Master Chief's photorealistic real human colon in 4K?
His balls.
No, I just I don't know. To me, Matty just left. I think I just think to me it's just so silly. Like it's not even a matter of lore. To me, it's just a matter of like theme. Like thematic, like it goes beyond just storytelling and all this stuff. It's just like what do people come here for? What is the vibe here? And they just missed it entirely, like from the beginning. And it's like maybe it's cocky and overconfident to say that I definitely know the direction that this should have gone better, but like I also am 1,000,000% confident in that.
Yeah, but no, that's what I'm saying is that I wouldn't have invented Star Wars if you told me here's all of the cool shit that's going on. What's next? I'd be like, how do you fuck that up? I'd be like, there's a million different awesome things you could do. I don't care what people think of that. That's obvious, like that a lot of, and it's what Dagan and I said on a recent episode about A New Hope when we were like, there are 1 million, straight up 1 million people that could have made a better Star Wars film than that episode. Like,
I think you're right.
Straight up. Just 100%. People with just random ideas, dudes online. Red Letter Media would have made a better Star Wars movie.
Sometimes chasing the bag and catching trends. That's what I'll leave y'all with. Sometimes chasing the bag and catching trends as far as what's popping at the time of creation of the game also plays a factor. And if you have the higher ups looking at, let's just say, at the time of Rainbow Six Siege was one of the hottest things. Overwatch is one of the hottest things. And you don't have the confidence to deliver in your IP and think that it's going to resonate the way it did, then coupled with the fact that, based on what we're seeing with the developer reports, that they don't feel they're being listened to and the message is not getting there. So if there's a disconnect on that, and then the upper management is doing something else and has a bigger vision, that's got to get sorted out. So that's part of why I'm like, I could see where this disconnect. Because if upper level is trying to chase a bag and a trend, and then you don't have the scope to do that or the talent to do that, that could create a disconnect there too.
Yeah, very well said. Dustin, my sweet boy, I haven't heard from you in a while. Do you want to say anything before we move on to the final topic?
I was trying to think of something that hasn't been covered about Halo at this point, because I think that all really good points were made. Let's make a Halo JRPG. Honestly, let's get this in there. Maybe some Covenant waifus. Because honestly,
okay, let's chill. Let's relax.
At this point, Chris,
let's relax.
Why not?
Let's relax.
Just think about it.
Look, I'll meet you halfway. A turn-based RPG, I think, would be cool.
Dude, Cortana already practically is a waifu. I mean, let's be real.
Let's relax.
It gave you some thoughts when you were a kid. It gave you some feelings. I know.
You know what's funny to me? Like, I never really thought Cortana was hot until 343 took it.
They made her hot
because they made her like I almost didn't even register that she was naked in the first 3 games. Sincerely, because the poly count was like it was like such like the graphics were just so like relatively like you kind of had to imagine a lot of it. And then the Halo 4, she's just stacked, like for no reason. I'm like, okay.
The 360 generation brought us a lot of great things.
Imagine the hiring process for the body actress for Cortana in Halo 4. Like, imagine how inappropriate that must have been.
Moving on.
Damn.
Forspoken, I want to talk about briefly now. I think I said at the top of the show that I don't think any of us on Sacred Symbols plan on playing this game. I don't think it looks particularly very good. I don't know that I can handle it, to be perfectly honest with you. But I wanted to ask Matty. I definitely want to start with you because you're in the middle of it as we're recording. By the time this goes up, it'll seem like it was 5 years old.
We'll be on to the next new wave.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry about me, everyone. It's
people
fine.
have been angry about so many. I can't even keep up. I can't remember anything I say and anything that people are mad at me about. I just kind of move on to the next day, and I'm just like I'm starting fresh. Matty, what do you have to say about Forspoken, how was this game, this PlayStation 5 exclusive, timed exclusive at least, from Square Enix and Luminous, the guys that did Final Fantasy 15? This I'm troubled by the dialogue, especially. I know Chris is as well. Speak to me about this game and what's going on with it.
Yeah. Forspoken is a game that I think obviously some of the writing was on the wall, but given the parkour and gameplay looked cool, I think it said to us something like, well, yeah, maybe I can just kind of put this bantering to the side and enjoy a fun game. What I felt with Forspoken was, as I was going through it, like, of course the dialogue is grating, and I'm sure we'll dig into that. But that's like almost the surface level problem, right? When you go deeper, there are more complex problems with this game beyond like this thin story with, I would say, the worst protagonist I've seen in a long while. For example, the control scheme. So when you go to do the magic parkour, which is like the main thing the game is built around, like you're running around, you're flowing over objects and stuff. Did you activate that? You hold circle. Now, the problem is the combat relies on it a lot. The combat, you need to control the camera. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. You hold circle, you can't control the camera. And anyone in design would just look at that and go, oh, well, we need to put that to the left thumbstick, click it so you can run around and control. I would argue that would make a million times difference, but you can't do that. It's just there. It's just baked into the game.
And there's no button mapping or anything like that.
Got to buy a DualSense Edge.
Yeah.
Get that back button.
Yeah,
$200.
Go buy it. Yeah.
I think you filthy casuals got to start embracing the claw for this reason.
I said that in my review, though. I said, if you can play with claw, which I ended up switching to, I was like, I did not fucking put this on my bingo card for the start of 2023 was I'm playing Forspoken in the claw grip. But I had like my pointer finger wrapped on the circle. I was like, okay, at least I'm doing this. But I was like, this is not realistic for like the average consumer to grab their controller like this. It's not going to happen because it's something I just naturally taught myself with Call of Duty because I didn't have a scuff controller. So that's how I got to jump shot. But, it's little things like that. It's not taking advantage of the existing mechanics. So it's all about the parkour for me because that's like the defining thing and they don't use it. Like every boss in that game is in a flat, open room, wide open. And I'm like, your main thing is leaping over, dodging objects in elegance. And in your major pieces, you don't even use it. There was one boss I can remember where there was water, and I would actually have to magic parkour in this very tight arena to the next place. I was like, okay, that is what I'm looking for. But where's the verticality? Where's the scaling environment? It's like this game begs for that. It just never does it. I'm like, well, they just clearly didn't have time. So to me, it's not really just the story and the dialogue, which is what we all saw coming. It's just playing the game. I feel like it's a little harsh, but I think it's true, is like a poor man's Infamous. Like there's a flow to when you're firing off abilities in Infamous. Like Sucker Punch just did a phenomenal job with the feel of how you're switching abilities and whatnot. But when it comes to Forspoken, for example, you'll have this fire ability, which you have like a sword that's a melee attack. And then you also have an ability that's, again, very Infamous, like you're shooting over the shoulder, third-person camera, just popping them with rocks pretty much. And I thought like, oh, okay, we're going to combine these two. So I can like maybe press square, I can use my melee, and then I can hold the right trigger and use this ability where I'm shooting things. But it's like, no, you can only have one attack active at a time. So it's either you're pressing R2 to swing your sword or you're pressing R2 to shoot this ball of rock. And I'm like, again, design would just look at that and say, well, how can we get these two active at the same time? And the game just doesn't answer its own problems ever. So it just collapses very quickly. The other thing is like the director didn't tell the truth at all. He said the game's like 35, 40 hours long. I beat it in 10. I didn't rush at all. I beat 10 it in 10
hours? Wow.
I swear on my life. I had the hour count when I rolled credits.
Yeah, I believe
10
it.
hours flat.
Trophies will show that too.
Yeah. And then I went and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do the open world. Like, because once you beat the game, it lets you drop back in there. And the open world's based around combat. So when you're running around doing all the combat stuff, you're like, again, those problems resurface where I'm just like, this doesn't feel good to play. The controls are bad. They don't make use of the mechanics, so it's boring. There's actually a shot in my review where I'm showing one of the bosses. It's literally just going 1, 2, 3, jump to the left. 1, 2, 3, jump to the right. And any game I feel like on planet Earth, you could oversimplify and make it sound bad. But this was literally like the most one note, 1, 2, 3, just move a little bit to the left. You won't get hit. The mechanics are bad from how you're playing to who's attacking you. They reuse mechanics. So like a common enemy has the same pattern of attacks as the first major boss in the game, it's not a great game. And it's funny because like when I posted my clip on Twitter, a lot of people were like really clearly didn't check the full tape, but I just posted a clip, man, and people were really assuming a lot about me. We can leave it at that. But when you go deeper, there are so many problems with this game. And I'm not the only one saying it. That's the crazy part. I seem to attract this crowd, though, that thinks I'm the only one saying it. But this game got like, I don't know what the Metacritic is now. But
it's in the high 60s, I think. I'll look.
Yeah, it was in the 60s last I saw. And I'm like, that's a general, like, middling consensus. And we don't see that often in today's industry. You usually get the odd 9, 9.5, 10, where you're like, what the hell? Like, as the reviewer, I'm like, what did you play?
68.
68. Thank you. So I just think it's crazy to me that people are so quick to defend this. And I think people are going to learn. And the other thing is that the people who are defending it, I just kind of like, I don't want to be overly dismissive because I try to be very receptive, but I'm like, most of you probably aren't even going to play this. Like, no one's going to probably want to spend full price on this game. And if you do, like I said in my review, like if you want to, like there is a weird factor here you may like the cringe dialogue, the kind of jankiness of the combat, the unique parkour. Like there might be something there you find attractive, and just by weird alone, you're like, I like this. It's different. But different doesn't mean good. And I think, I said in my review, I was like, if you're going to buy it, like get it on a sale when it's $10. Like this thing's going to drop in price quick, no doubt. But yeah, that's the too long didn't read in my review and how I feel about Forspoken.
Chris, I'm eager to go to you and hear now that the game's in the wild and you're seeing more of it, what do you think about your proclamations? I mean, we were right. I mean, this game it's cringy, but it also doesn't look very good. Is it me, or is there just a major visual downgrade of this game? I was like, oh my God, it looks horrible
to run it.
Yeah, it looks worse than some of the old Assassin's Creeds. I was seeing like screenshots of like just how they bake lighting and how it's not a very good looking game, which is kind of wild. I don't know. It's in the upper 60s, you said, on Metacritic?
Yeah, 68. So, and by the way, it says awards and rankings, number 5 best PlayStation 5 game of 2023.
Oh man. Well,
Give it time.
68, that's just 10 short of critical acclaim.
Indeed.
I think
that's a Sonic joke.
I think there's a lot. There's a lot about this game that confuses me. Like, because I remember when we first saw it, and we thought like the parkour looked cool, and I remember thinking like, okay, this didn't set my alarms off immediately like Anthem or No Man's Sky did, where I was like, from the second I saw that, I was like, that looks cool, but there's something fucking way wrong going on here. This felt more like, okay, yeah, we'll see how it goes, and then we got the dialogue, and the first time that we heard anything from it, I remember being like, it's over. It's over. Like, because they were hiding the dialogue for a while, but before we had only really seen, like all just animation, which looks, in some places pretty damn good. And, there was a sense of like, maybe we'd get some kind of almost like a prototype vibe of like, kind of like parkouring through like, not a city necessarily, but like through like whatever this ancient landscape is. And that's kind of cool with like different effects and like flying and magic. And even Colin mentioned that like just the magic being, I think there's like a nails.
Yeah, it's for nails, which is super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the RPG systems are actually cool. I complimented that in my review. That's customization is good.
Yeah, that's a neat presentation. But then, that dialogue was just so unbelievably bad that I was like, okay, this is the writing's definitely gonna be rough with this one. And then we kept getting more trailers of kind of the same animations, the same barren wastelands that don't really look all that interesting. And I was just thinking like, oh, it's just the writing, isn't it? It's just like the writing's gonna drag this whole thing down, and there's probably more things wrong with it. But I don't know, that tweet that you that tweet that you posted, it's got 23 million views. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's the most relevant thing I've ever posted in my career.
23 million views on this.
It's funny tweet. Though. When I was playing the game and that clip played, I literally like planted a seed in my head. I was like, I'm gonna post that the day the embargo lifts and see what people think. I think this will spark a conversation. Boy, was I right. The thing you mentioned the writing, Chris, and I think it's an important focal point because when it comes to Forspoken's dialogue, I don't even think the problem at times could be its cringiness. I think it's that they soak up so much of the script with bullshitting and useless exposition that the main story content that you need to learn to understand its world is actually found in the archive section. You have to read to understand what's happening in the story. That's problematic because, I mean, the whole game, Cuff and Frey are talking constantly. And I feel like that would be okay if they were moving towards something. But given the short breath story, there's no progression of their relationship. It's just like two people who clearly dislike each other. And it's agonizing to listen to. But since we're not moving anywhere with it, and it's just BSing the whole time, all of the story stuff that, by the way, the world is kind of interesting. Like with the break, with Athia, I'm like, okay, there's some pieces here I'm kind of digging, but it's buried in written lore. And that's not how you tell a story. Like, oh, hey, by the way, this cutscene you're watching that's like been going on for 20 minutes, none of it fucking matters. But what does matter is the script you're going to unlock after this. Read that. It's like, but you guys had a budget to voice all of this. Why didn't you? It's
the thing that I noticed was because we both talked about this. I remember I tweeted something. I don't remember how big it got to, but I was getting like a lot of responses of like, well, you and you were brought into it too. It's like you and Matty liked High on Life, and that's just as annoying. And it's like,
oh yeah, I saw
you
that.
don't. This is peak,
I didn't even like High on Life. Like, that's a lie.
But this is peak death of like media literacy to me, because like there is a clear difference in tone between a game that feels incomprehensible, like a bunch of weirdos riffing in a room and improvising this thing that really probably shouldn't exist. I had a good time with High on Life because it just felt bizarre to see. Like there's an alien selling cum in that game. I'm just like, I never in a million years would have thought I would see that in a video game. It just feels like a bunch of guys joking with each other and building a game out of it. And that's amusing enough to me where it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And there's a charm to that. This is Marvel.
I mean, it also tries to take itself seriously. Just go on, but I'm just letting people know. Forspoken does try to take itself very seriously. That's a major part of the problem. High on Life does not. Sorry, go on.
No, High on Life is distressingly so. Does not take itself seriously at all. And this thing is very clearly like it's that Joss Whedon, it's outdated writing even by today's standards. Like it's just like it's this pre-Avengers 2012 Marvel like quippiness, and it's like self-serious somehow despite the fact that it's trying to be irreverent.
Yeah.
Like every clip of dialogue that I've ever seen, like even beyond just some of the stuff that's gone viral, is just like, this is not, I mean, it's performed well. And people are like being really weird about it. It's like you're attacking the actress, and it's like, no, you don't know anything. This is a writing
nothing
problem.
to do with her. I said in my review, it's not her performance. It's just the script. The script is bad. She's just doing her job.
Yeah, they direct the actors. An actor's performance is a direct result of the director, 1,000,000%. Like every single time. I always hate it when people blame actors for certain things. It's very fucking
it's not
insane.
her fault. It's very clear it's not her fault. Like by design, she's supposed to be a very dislikable protagonist. I just think because she has no forward momentum, even to the end of the game, I'm like, she just sucks. That's not the actress's fault. She didn't do it. She didn't write the game.
You know what's funny to me? It's like they say that she's like from New York, but there's like nothing about.
Like
there's nothing specifically. I'm curious to see where you're gonna go, because I'm just like, I don't know anybody who speaks this way. I've never met
New
a single
Yorkers say
person
fuck a lot, don't they? Yeah.
What do you think, Huck? Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. What do you think, Huck?
Man, I'm glad y'all brought it up. Let's get to the elephant in the room. What's really going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, look, I'm gonna be real with y'all. Like when I first saw Forspoken, New Yorker, Mekong, black woman, all right, lead protagonist. I'll be brutally honest. I was excited for the potential of it, and I'm like, all right. And I was I remember seeing the earlier previews prior to the dialogue that I'm like, oh, this looks like it has a lot of potential. I'm looking to get more of it. So obviously, we got the infamous first trailer kind of with the dialogue. My man Chris had the tweet of the year, and I have to agree. I was just like, wow, this is really bad, like narrative dialogue. Like this is very cringy. I'm not really feeling it. I just got to be real, and I feel I'm qualified as a black man from New York to say that that's not how I see sisters talk. You know what I mean? That's just me. You know what I'm saying? But that's just my opinion.
I just realized we're all New Yorkers. It's just all New Yorkers except for Dustin.
Except for me.
Except for Dustin, yeah. So it's just like shout out to Ben, baby. Shout out to Ben. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I was just like, okay. Now, the elephant in the room is this, and I just got to be real. Like, I seen Matty getting flack, and I'm seeing a couple of my friends getting flack, is that a lot of people, because let's be real, there's not a lot of main Black protagonists in video games, right?
Yeah.
There's few and far, but I could think like Lee Everett, the guy from Mafia.
Mhm.
I could think, there's a few, obviously Deathloop recently, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing. So there was a championing of this game of like, we need this one, right? To win, so to speak. We need it to be good. And I think what's happening is the emotionality of that is being taken out on people who dislike the game for legit, we don't like the game, we're not feeling it. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the separation is. Just because someone does not like this game does not mean automatically they're racist and don't want female Black characters to be in the lead. And I think that's where I'm trying to speak to some of my people who are on the other side of it, because it's like, people don't have this energy when it's a white protagonist all the time. And I'm like, look, we gotta be real. I'm Black, and a lot of people, we not feeling it either. You know what I'm saying? So that's just where I'm at with it. I played the demo, and like, Matty, you're way farther. You reviewed the game. I love the idea of it. Like, it was trying to do fast parkour and execution. It just didn't come together for me, right?
That's the name of the game for it. Yeah, it doesn't come.
Yeah, it just didn't come together. And then, it was very long range projectile. She did have some spells where you kind of get into like a melee combat kind of thing. And that was okay, but it just didn't connect. That's just all it was. And for me, there's nothing worse than bad directing, bad dialogue. That is going to immediately get me out of the game. Yeah. If I don't believe and I don't want to hear you talking, like if there's an option to turn you off to minimize you, that means there's some thought about not about the confidence of the writing or the dialogue, just to even have that in the game. So that's just pretty much what it is. I just hate to see, people going at each other over that aspect of it. But the reality is, just want to be clear, just because you don't like Forsaken doesn't automatically put a person in that box. And it's just that for me personally, this just wasn't it. That's all. I want more attempts. I like the attempt, you know what I'm saying? But we got to see what the next situation.
I appreciate you saying that.
Luminous.
Yeah,
because I got to defend my brothers on the other side as well too.
It would have been bad dialogue coming from any person from of any background. It's just not good dialogue.
Bro, I'm moving it with my mind. Come on, like no, that's not it. That's not it. I'm sorry.
Well, the problem also lies in like the bad faith comparisons. Like a lot of people, like one of the quote tweets I saw, because like I said, I don't care. Like I literally posted because I'm like, oh, people might find this funny. And it just completely went the other. I was like, holy shit. But someone was like, y'all watched Deadpool and like, you didn't mind that. I'm like, Deadpool had quality elements surrounding it. It was a movie solely based on satire. Like it's all it was. Like that is not this. Like people are going to learn. Like they're going to buy it either out of spite or curiosity. And they're going to learn how serious the game tries to take itself. But these comparisons I saw to Uncharted even, I'm just like, when was the last time some of these people writing these things played a game? Like, I always talk about it with like a lot of games in AAA recently. I talked about it with Gotham Knights too. This quality of writing, the bar is going lower and lower, and I think people are just accepting of it, and that's their choice. I'm not saying you got to play like a Larian Studios game, which is for a very specific crowd, but people aren't recognizing that like tongue-in-cheek humor can be done pretty well in games if it's not just there in your face 24/7. If it is, it has to be a kind of high on life experience where it's just like, let's go all out, comedic game, baby. And also that a lot of these references are from things when that MCU style writing was really beginning, like the early 2010s, right? When it was becoming a thing. So like when you reference an Uncharted 2 or 3, the whoa, it's like, yeah, that was from that era. It's a decade old now. Like we evolved writing styles, like it changes. And people are just trying to kind of get the whataboutism in. I mean, it's Twitter in a nutshell, right? Like, it's what it is.
That's all. I remember seeing people quote you like, people never have a problem with Marvel doing this. It's like, bro, I see people shitting on Marvel constantly.
Yeah, I'm like, Marvel's under fire for Phase 4 constantly.
Yeah, I am literally one of those people and have been for years now. We're like,
and I love Marvel. Like, it's insane.
I miss when I did. But like it's just like that. That is a writing style that's like very tired. We've seen it a million times. Like Marvel, it's always one of these things where it's like people like to. I have this conversation about UI a lot, where like cursor UI specifically, and how that started with. I remember Destiny. Destiny was the first game that I remember playing with that kind of like obtuse kind of like cursor driven UI where everything was like different. I remember at the time thinking like, this is kind of cool. This is different. It feels, you know, it's not my favorite UI necessarily. It's definitely like more stylistic than it is functional. And I think that's kind of like one of the main problems with it. But it's also, at that time, it felt interesting. It felt new. It felt like playing Destiny, especially vanilla Destiny, was as fraught with peril as that game was. It felt like a new experience sincerely. Like it felt as magical as a new game in that time could. And as time went on, that UI got aped and aped and aped and aped. So like now when I see it, I'm just so fucking tired of it. Like I'm over it. And it doesn't bother me in Destiny because they did it. They started that. They have, if anybody has a right to stick with something that sucks, it's the people that started it. And that's why I don't really mind it with Marvel. If they're like getting into a Marvel hole, it's like, whatever, that's what people come here for. But when it starts infecting other things that don't need it, that's the problem. Forspoken did not need to be written this way. It's so unnecessary.
Yeah, and I think one thing, Dustin, let's get you involved in this through this perspective here is I'm curious what you think of Luminous and their future. This is their second game, and Final Fantasy 15 being their first. I think that this will maybe be their last game. It seems like Square Enix has no patience for things that aren't performing. They're shutting down Marvel Avengers, even though obviously Crystal has already been spun off along with the other Western studios. They got rid of IO a while ago. The only studio, and I imagine it's a very cheap studio that seems to survive even though their games don't sell, is Tokyo RPG Factory, which Square Enix almost never talks about, but they are still mulling around apparently. Do you think Luminous survives Forspoken? Because it seems like the die is cast on this game. And I was actually particularly surprised because I saw ads for this during football.
Yes.
Which I thought was very peculiar because first of all, I didn't think it made sense for that market, but I also just felt like, okay, so you're marketing this game. PlayStation is. So, and that might be part of the deal of getting the timed exclusivity, of course. And that might have been an obligation regardless of the quality of the game. So you can't read into it too much. But nonetheless, I think this game has commercial failure written on it. So I'm wondering what you think of what the future is for them.
This is a strange one. And this is what I was thinking when the reviews came out. I don't know why this didn't click for me earlier, but I feel like Forspoken has like its foot firmly in two different sides. And it honestly, what really struck me was that it reminds me of an era of Japanese games in the like PS3 Xbox era, where Japanese games felt the need to appeal to American audiences. And so what's so strange about Forspoken is that right now in, we'll just say like anime, nerd, whatever, Japanese culture, Isekai is huge. There are Isekai animes are a dime a dozen. And for someone who doesn't know what that is, it's overall, there's some people put hard and fast rules to what this genre means, but if you actually me in the comments, I'm not going to stand down. But overall, an Isekai is like someone who gets from the real world who's transported to another world and then lives a fantasy life, right? So Forspoken is so weird because it's almost when they were planning out this game, they thought, okay, we're going to make an Isekai game. This will really, really be appealing to Japanese audiences and American audiences. But how do we make it a little more appealing that we can kind of get that full range of the Western audience? Let's kind of add some Marvel humor. Let's kind of add that flair to it, right? Let's get some American writers in here to kind of give it that angle. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to really, I mean, I don't know about from the Isekai perspective, but it doesn't really seem to succeed at either one. And that's what I'm wondering as far as you asked me about the fate of Luminous, is that I wonder how this game is received to the Japanese market, which
good question. Yeah.
I don't think that even if it's a huge hit in Japan, I don't think that will be enough. But that's the thing I'm most curious about, is that what if some of these things that come off as cringy to us just doesn't really translate to that audience. And instead they just see a game that is super modern and high budget, that is like a lot of the anime that is really popular in Japan right now. So I'm really curious when we start to see some of these numbers come out, or just what that Japanese perspective is on this game. as far as just the thing that about Matty's tweet and seeing the response right now, it's just the amount of absolute copium in some of these replies. It's like, even if you took all this writing stuff out, let's say the writing is immaculate, it sounds like it's just not that great anyway. And it's interesting because I see a lot of the reading those responses, Matty. What struck me the most is that there were some people that were like, "What? I like this. This is really good," and then people are like, "This is absolute dog shit." It's like, well, clearly people are going to have a different barometer on what is cringe. Clearly. Because there's stuff that is really popular that even just the four of us or the five of us are going to look at and say, like, this sucks. But clearly millions of people like different types of things, right? So I don't know. It's so weird to see, like, not only the people that are vehemently defending this like it's some game that needs to be defended, but
like they
also the
worked on
people.
Yeah. I always love that when
think-
people defend games like they worked on them.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's also people that act like this game killed their mother, and it's like it just sucks. And it's fine. We can have a few days of dunking on it, and I have no problem with that. But we don't need to go out and like have a brigade against this game. It sucks. It won't sell well, and that'll be it. Well, for this game, and I almost put out a tweet and I was like, it's not worth it because there's just too much noise out there about it at this point. But it's like we're just gonna forget. Forspoken is going to be forgotten
I didn't
about.
even bother reading. I'm just like, yeah, y'all be over it soon. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We forget about good games,
Yeah.
So why does this game even matter? So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too much in my feelings now about Forspoken, but
yeah, you're feeling it right now. That's okay. I mean, I appreciate that.
Well, something to think about.
Yeah, I think clearly this game's not going to sell well. So in the West, I actually did see positive sales data in Japan about it, but I think it was on Komatsu, but it was last week. I think about pre-orders or something. But it was. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say I believe that. I'm telling you, this Isekai thing. I really think it's going to have a strong impact on how that market receives it.
Yeah, but that market is truncating in the console space. Is just not even that important. I think we saw that. That's the unfortunate truth. A lot of their games are very important and becoming increasingly important, which is awesome. Again, which is the way it should be in console gaming, especially. But as far as the market share is concerned, that's a very mobile and handheld audience, and we all know that's Switch oriented, and so it's just not the same. Even if your game does well on PS5, it's just not the same anymore. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens with Luminous 2. I just think Square Enix is in an urgent situation right now, not financially, but if you read their financials, they're basically saying like we need to continue to figure out how to survive in this new environment. And if you have making something like Luminous or something like Forspoken, I think that you're going to be on the chopping block, and that would be very weird. But I just think Final Fantasy 15 was weird too. See, I haven't played Forspoken. I don't want to judge it too harshly in any way, shape, or form. But I did play Final Fantasy 15. I tried it twice. I didn't get any further than like 10 hours into it either time. But when I saw the dialogue in Forspoken, I was like, this is kind of not that far away from what Final Fantasy 15 was like. Final Fantasy 15 was absurd. I mean, that was one of the things that was in my opinion, turned me off from it. I'm like, I don't care about these characters in this weird camp that is going on here with this bro life, and they're driving around in a court. I'm like, it's very corny and strange to me. It's a lot of this stuff is kind of in that Square Enix bubble where it's like it's Kingdom Hearts very much too. Where I'm like, this is too much. This is I personally, from the outside looking in, I'm like, this is too much. It's too much for me. Yeah.
Did I just use a Phoenix down from my fucking inventory? Whoa.
Matty, you don't interpret Final Fantasy 15 like that?
Yeah, I would say I disagree with you on that one. Like 15 to me does the best thing that thing does, because like the combat's on autopilot, like the side quests are just not good. There's banter, but there's moments of silence. I am not exaggerating when I say Forspoken doesn't have a moment of downtime in the terms of talking. Like it's always chest open, looting, fighting, getting hit, cutscenes, constant. I think 15 has those moments of brevity where you can just like turn on the Final Fantasy radio and listen to a track and just coast around in your car. And I love that. But I think what that game gets right is like brotherhood and sacrifice for each other. The message in Forspoken's built a lot around like Alice in Wonderland, and it's very on the nose with that. So there's no surprises at all. And you can just tell like this is a shitty protagonist who's going to try to become a better person. But I don't even think she does, quite frankly. I really don't. Or I think 15. Yeah, you haven't finished it, so I get why. But I think 15 by the end of the game, like you see that bond between these four, and I think it's very powerful. Especially when they realize like what they need to do. It's a messy story, don't get me wrong, but like I feel like that game had a driving theme with Forspoken. When I mean like this Frey, the protagonist, is just like ruthless, man. Like no exaggerations at all. Because I wanted to like her. Like she's very different kind of protagonist, different world. You know, coming from New York City, I was like, Cog was like, oh, that was the surprise factor because I was on media blackout for this game. I just knew the dialogue was kind of but I was thinking like, yo, when I started the game and you're in New York City, I was thinking like, wait, this is cool. Like I love the idea of this. So I think she had a lot going for her. They just fumbled the ball, as you would say earlier. But yeah, with 15, I would disagree. With Kingdom Hearts, it's such a tough, like that's where I feel like some of the comparisons, like I saw some people in replies, my friends were sending to me, they were like, look at this one. It was like a Kingdom Hearts one with like Riku and Sora talking. I'm just like, we're talking about a Disney game about friendship and relationships where two friends are bonding versus someone telling a bracelet to shut the fuck up. Like we're really going to try to draw these two together. That's what I'm saying. Like, and for all Kingdom Hearts complexity, Dustin, I'm going to speak your language here. Like, I think it gets relationships right. Like, I think it gets friendships right. And like what people mean to one another through its music, it's conveyed through its character interactions. It's conveyed. Can't be corny. Yes, but it's a Disney game. Like it's for a younger audience. It's going to have a little bit of that innocent nature, but like Forspoken, like it's just incomparable to me. Like, I'm getting off track. But yeah, I would say ultimately
almost
15,
like context is important.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why I said these people are going to learn when they play the game, and they can. And they can have their fun or not. It's like I'm not here to tell you what you can and can't like, but look, they'll learn, I think. And if they end up liking it, great. Like more power to them. I envy them.
Look. If you have to, evoke Kingdom Hearts to defend your game's dialogue, like I don't. Like I understand. I understand that these are different games. Like this is a Disney game for children where fucking Mickey Mouse is fighting alongside fucking I don't know Sephiroth or whatever the fuck. I don't know. So I don't know if that's the one you want to like. I understand people like it, but like I don't know if that's the one you want to evoke. You want to evoke when defending this game that's clearly meant to be aimed at like a more, you know, a more mature audience. It's a very weird
autistic,
Yeah.
more autistic audience.
Kingdom Hearts is not your weapon.
That's okay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. So here was my thought process with Forspoken was, yeah, the dialogue's bad, but I think there's a place there, and everyone knows there's a place in my world for what I call podcast games where I'm like checking boxes, I'm just playing them, I'm listening to things, I'm doing other things, I'm not even fucking paying attention to the game really. I'm just kind of passing the time. But I find that this is not an ideal time for this because there are certain games I want to play. From the time we're recording this, Dead Space comes out in a couple of days, and then we're moving into all this stuff. Hogwarts Legacy, PSVR 2 is going to be out with Horizon and all this, and then Resident Evil 4. When am I going to ever find the time to play this? So this will be a game, if I ever get to it, I would get to much later at a much cheaper cost. I don't want to send Square Enix the wrong signals. I always tell people to buy games at full price if you really believe in it or want to show your support. You got to do the exact opposite and speak with your wallet and the antithesis as well. I'm not going to give them fucking $70 for this. I can just tell off the bat it's a strange game. And the one parting thing I'll say is I guess I'm always curious in situation, and this isn't second party, but in timed third party, in the timed third party environment, I am always mega curious what they saw in this game.
Yeah.
You can read into that in good and bad ways. Like when people in the PlayStation ecosystem shit talk Starfield, I always say, remember, Sony was all about making Starfield a PlayStation exclusive. That was the pursuit. That's where the Deathloop deal came from, the Ghostwire deal. That was the next step, was getting that deal. The timing was off, and Microsoft swooped in. It could possibly be because of that, by the way, that they felt like they needed to come in and kind of get it away from them for that timed exclusivity, at least part of it. And so it worked out, I imagine, in their favor because both companies liked what they saw. But you see a game like this and you're like, what did you see here? Because and it's not like, we know PlayStation does walk away from games occasionally and does relinquish control of second party games. Remember Me is a great example of a game that was supposed to be a PlayStation exclusive. But then the first party games that get canceled quietly before they're really announced, like the sci-fi game at Santa Monica and so on and so forth. But these third party exclusives have no risk in them because they're not coming from your organic stable. You're probably not even paying very much for them. It could very easily just be a a marketing offset with some dollars on top and all of the rest. I don't know, man. I always wonder. And it's the same thing with, we'll use the Xbox example, that Crossfire game that people didn't like. It's like, what did you see in this? Like, how can a game be this ill-received?
Yeah.
And you thought it was a good idea.
You
know? Very weird.
Mm-hmm.
When you have all the money and all the power. Very, very weird. And I do wonder if this will paint in any way Square Enix negatively going into Final Fantasy 16, although I doubt it, because there's going to be a lot of the smaller stuff coming up interstitially. Octopath Traveler comes soon, and Front Mission and some other stuff. So,
baby. Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
So I'm excited. But guys, I appreciate your time today.
Of course.
And talking about Xbox, talking about Bethesda, talking about Starfield and all the rest. It was fun. And we'll see you all on your regular programming, Defining Duke, Sacred Symbols for us, as well as Constellation for all of us in different permutations. Thank you so much for your loving kindness over there, or out there, I should say, on Patreon and YouTube free feeds, etc. We couldn't do without you. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.